The film begins by introducing Lieutenant Jake Harris, currently en route with his team for a classified mission, and Zoe Anderson, a CIA analyst. Their destination is a meeting point to retrieve Amin Mansour, a prisoner accused of terrorism and currently held in a CIA Black Site Island penitentiary. Upon arrival, Jake and his team are greeted by Tom Shields, the prison's second in command. As they make their way to the warden's main office, they observe various inmates confined in visible cells. Tom guides Zoe and Jake to meet Jack York, the authoritative warden of the institution. Before the encounter, Tom warns them about York's unpredictable nature and his tendency to be uncooperative, especially since he was not previously informed of their impending visit. York seems puzzled by the sudden interest from the CIA in Amin Mansour and their plan to move him to a prison in the United States. Zoe remains silent about the details when York questions her, as it's classified information. Despite this, Zoe assures York of the operation's legitimacy by presenting an official document with the Minister of Defense's signature, validating the extraction and relocation of Amin Mansour. However, York continues to resist the idea, emphasizing the potential risks of transferring a convicted terrorist to a different facility. To confirm the transfer, York plans to contact the minister himself and instructs Tom to escort Zoe and Jake to Amin Mansour. A detainee subjected to continuous torment in recent months, Amin has chosen to remain silent. Zoe then orders the removal of Amin's shackles and proceeds to question him. Amin defends himself, claiming to be a businessman and denying any involvement in terrorism. Upon learning about his upcoming relocation to the US, Amin asserts his rights as a British citizen to have legal representation. However, Zoe dismisses his request, stating that his British citizenship has been revoked by the foreign minister, depriving him of such entitlements. Following this, Jake expresses concern to Zoe about the potential physical and psychological implications of her handling of the prisoner, but his warning is ignored. Zoe remains determined to expedite Amin Mansour's transfer. Similarly, echoing York's earlier concerns, Jake also voices suspicion to Zoe and the CIA about the sudden extraction and relocation of Amin Mansour. Yet, Zoe justifies the CIA's actions as a preventive measure against a recurrence of the September 11th tragedy. Despite some of Jake's team members suspecting that Zoe might be hiding information, Jake clarifies that their only task is to ensure the safe escort of Zoe and the detainees, nothing more. Shortly after, the vehicle transporting the prisoner appeared. However, chaos erupted as an individual from the vehicle shot at a guard. The vehicle forcefully breached the entrance, and a group of armed men concealed within the truck initiated a sudden and indiscriminate attack on the guards. A firefight became unavoidable. Jake and his team had no choice but to assist the guards. Zoe proceeded to free Amin from his confinement, and, accompanied by Jake and a few team members, prepared to board a helicopter. However, before reaching it, a group of gunmen destroyed the helicopter. The assailants successfully incapacitated the guards, taking control and forcing Jake and the others to find a secure hiding spot. Subsequently, Jake and his team guided Zoe and Amin to the control room. In the process, Jake managed to neutralize several attackers, with one succumbing to a lethal shot. Tom tried to call for reinforcements, but the communication tower had been destroyed by the terrorists. The only available emergency phone was in York's office. While monitoring the CCTV feeds, it was apparent that York was struggling to fend off the armed assailants alone. Within the group attacking York, Zoe identified one of them, Hakim Sirif, a former mercenary who had risen to lead a radical faction in Syria. Jake urged Zoe to reveal the truth about the assault by Hakim and his associates, aimed at assassinating Amin. Zoe finally revealed that Amin supported ISIS and contributed financially. The CIA found evidence of money laundering in Amin's business, channeling funds to finance global terrorist attacks led by ISIS. Zoe tried to persuade Jake that Amin was part of a larger plan for a massive bombing in Washington, D.C. orchestrated by ISIS. Therefore, she insisted on immediately extraditing Amin to the United States to thwart the bombing, believing he knew the bomb's location. Amin vehemently denied Zoe's accusations, asserting no knowledge of Hakim Sirif and his group. Despite this, Jake chose to trust Zoe and devised a plan to evacuate Zoe and Amin from the premises. However, Tom disagreed with Jake, finding Zoe's claims dubious. Jake proceeded to equip Amin with a bulletproof vest. At this point, Amin cautioned Jake, expressing that he would regret putting more trust in Zoe's words over his own judgment. Meanwhile, in the corridor, two members of Jake's team resisted assaults from terrorists attempting to gain entry. Despite sustaining several shots, they managed to temporarily hold off the enemy attacks. Tom devised a plan to surrender Amin to Hakim Sirif and his crew, hoping to halt their assault. He was unwilling to see his men suffer for the sake of protecting a condemned terrorist like Amin. However, Zoe intervened, trying to shield him. This angered Tom, leading him to urge Jake to eliminate Amin. When Jake declined to comply, Tom seized a firearm with the intention of carrying out the act himself. Feeling the imminent threat to his life, Amin finally admits that his 5-year-old son died in a U.S. military missile strike while attending a wedding ceremony. A week after this tragedy, a leader of a radical group and his crew approached Amin, intending to exploit his company for money laundering. Amin expresses regret for assisting them, explaining that at the time, he was consumed by grief over his son's loss and fueled by a thirst for vengeance due to the demise of his only child. However, Amin vehemently denies any knowledge of the bombing plot mentioned by Zoe. Shortly after, they receive a video call from York, who informs them that the emergency phone in his office is inoperable, and someone needs to exit the RA. The call is abruptly cut as York must fend off an onslaught from the terrorists. Tom then briefs Jake about the RA's location, where Jake plans to personally adjust the signal frequency, enabling them to seek assistance from the military. Before leaving, Zoe expresses her suspicion to Jake that Amin might be deceptive, firmly believing that he must be aware of the bombing plan and the bomb's location. Subsequently, Jake discreetly exits through a small window leading to a hidden passageway to avoid the terrorists in the hallway. Outside, Jake takes cover upon witnessing Hakim and his crew shooting soldiers and other prisoners. Hakim is then seen dragging a woman, a prison administration official, in front of him. He interrogates her about Amin Mansour's location, and she discloses that the CIA and Navy SEALs are set to transport Amin Mansour to Washington, D.C. An irritated Hakim executes the woman and instructs his minions to search for Amin. Jake quickly moves toward the RA, eliminates several terrorists, and reaches his destination. However, Jake is unfamiliar with some of the equipment in the room, leaving him exposed and oblivious to a terrorist who has infiltrated, preparing to attack him. Fortunately, York arrives just in time and eliminates the terrorist. York then tries to call for help while Jake quickly runs outside, diverting the terrorists' attention. Meanwhile, Hakim and his gang persist in searching for Amin Mansour in various locations but haven't found him yet. Hakim speculates that Amin is likely still in the control room, so he calls one of his younger subordinates, offering words of encouragement and commendation. By invoking the young man's pledge, which expressed readiness to sacrifice his life for a noble cause and receive a reward, Hakim equips him with a bomb vest, instructing him to carry out a suicide bombing mission. The young man was visibly shocked and terrified by the kamikaze task assigned by Hakim. Nevertheless, his comrades rallied around him, affirming that the mission was honorable and would be appropriately rewarded. Hakim and his crew accompanied the young man to the control room, where they suspected Amin was hiding. They used smoke grenades to obscure visibility and distract the Navy SEAL team members. Concurrently, Jake and York managed to return to the control room through a hidden passageway, where York expressed his intention to eliminate Amin, holding him responsible for the unnecessary loss of his men. Zoe and Jake, however, attempted to dissuade him. A fierce gunfight ensued, resulting in the casualties of all the Navy SEAL team members. Realizing this, Jake and York hurried to intervene. Unfortunately, it was too late as the young man designated for the suicide bombing moved forward and detonated himself right at the entrance of the control room. Jake and York survived the blast, as did Amin. However, Zoe and Tom sustained severe injuries and were rendered incapacitated. Despite Jake instructing Amin to stay put, Amin disregarded his directive and hastily fled the scene. Jake then turned to assess Zoe's condition, finding her feeble and helpless. She disclosed to Jake that Amin's wife was expecting a child. In her final moments, Zoe pleaded with Jake to transport Amin to Washington, D.C. to protect his wife and their unborn child. After conveying her last wish, Zoe succumbed to her injuries. Jake took cover upon sensing Hakim and his crew entering the room to survey the aftermath. Hakim was visibly enraged upon discovering Amin's successful escape. The young man had been sacrificed with the intention of getting rid of Amin to prevent him from revealing information about the impending large-scale bombing. Tom, who had managed to survive until this point, informed Hakim that Amin had exposed their entire plan. Hakim then killed Tom and instructed his crew to resume their search for Amin. Shortly after, Hakim received intelligence that the U.S. military was sending air support to their location to thwart their assault and transport Amin Mansour to Washington, D.C. One of his crew members suggested suspending their search for Amin Mansour and expediting their retreat. However, Hakim stubbornly declared they wouldn't withdraw until Amin Mansour was eliminated. Hakim and his gang remained unaware of Amin, who was concealed among the pile of prisoner corpses. Subsequently, Amin swiftly changed his attire, disguising himself as one of Hakim's men. His disguise was quickly uncovered, and Amin found himself promptly confined in a detention cell. Jake was in close proximity when Hakim's gang captured Amin. Launching an attack on Hakeem's men guarding Amin's cell, Jake successfully freed him. Jake then escorted Amin, ready to face the terrorist onslaught, despite fighting alone due to the loss of his entire team. Amin, however, seized the opportunity to escape, leaving Jake behind. Nevertheless, Jake stood firm and decisively eliminated the terrorists single-handedly. Simultaneously, Hakeem and a few of his men eventually located Amin and opened fire. As Hakeem prepared to assassinate Amin, Jake intervened and launched a counterattack. Jake successfully overpowered Hakeem's crew and engaged in a face-off with Hakeem. In the midst of the clash between Jake and Hakeem, Amin, who had survived thanks to his bulletproof vest, successfully fled the scene. Eventually, Jake succeeded in defeating Hakeem and chased after Amin. In a confrontation, Jake cornered Amin, attempting to convince him not to end his own life. Jake shared details about Amin's wife being pregnant and speculated that she might be at the intended bombing site. Consequently, Jake tried to persuade Amin to reconsider his suicidal intentions and join him on the journey to Washington, D.C. Shortly after, York, who survived, suddenly appeared, threatening to kill Amin. However, Jake swiftly intervened, incapacitating York and persuading him to spare Amin's life. With York convinced, Jake refocused on Amin, urging him to collaborate in preventing the bombing to save his wife, unborn child, and countless others. Eventually, Amin relented and agreed to be taken to Washington, D.C. to reveal the bomb's location, just as U.S. Air Force helicopters arrived. The film ends with a scene showing York in reflective silence, watching Jake and Amin depart from the island. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell if you want to watch more videos like this. Thank you for watching and see you again soon. Take care.